Day 2 of the 2024 NFL Draft is officially over. It's time for more NFL draft grades, this time for the second and the third round of the 2024 NFL Draft, giving you my thoughts and analysis on your team's draft from day 2 of this year's draft. If that sounds good, don't forget to spike the like button. Let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on your favorite team's draft so far. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's just okay? Let me know in the comment section below, and let me know where you agree or disagree with my letter grades for all 32 teams in the NFL. We're going to address each team's draft in alphabetical order. I'm going to do it quickly. I'm not going to spend too much time on each team. If you had more picks, obviously more time. I'm going to be looking at the needs. Did you address needs? Did you pick up a gem or two? Did you draft a starter or maybe a stud? I will address all of the above. Let's begin with the Arizona Cardinals, a team that had 5 selections on day 2, picking up Marvin Harrison Jr. and Darius Robinson on day 1. Their 2 biggest needs of pass rusher and wide receiver. On day 2, the most impressed I was about their draft was their pickups at cornerback. Love the Max Melton selection out of Rutgers. Love his ability to play inside, outside, man, or zone. Love the toughness he plays with. He's a good tackler. And I also really like his ability to play with speed and play man coverage. I think he's going to be a guy that can compete for a starting job right away. Elijah Jones out of Boston College, maybe the most underrated prospect at the corner position in the entire draft. 6'2", 4.4 speed. Somebody that I think is going to, once again, bring a multi-year starter, going to be able to compete for the Arizona Cardinals for a starting job, or at least give another layer of depth at that cornerback position. Trey Benson out of FSU, obviously a big, flashy running back pick, is going to be a very nice change of pace for James Conner almost immediately. He is electric. He can really run, and he hits the hole, and he's gone. So I'm excited for that one for fantasy purposes. Isaiah Adams, super impressed by him at the Senior Bowl. I thought he flashed a lot of good stuff at the Senior Bowl. I was really impressed there. I didn't really know who he was. Saw him play there. I think overall you got yourself a pretty nice guard. He played at guard. I think 14 games in his career. And then Tip Raymond is a tight end that's athletic, had a great combine, pretty good blocker as well, coming from Illinois. He's interesting. I didn't love that pick. That was probably my least favorite pick. If I had to give them a grade, love what they did at corner, like the running back pickup. I think that they got an A-. I felt like this was a really good utilization of day 2, picking up multiple needs, addressing depth at multiple positions, and then, of course, you can never go wrong with offensive linemen. Isaiah Adams, I could see him being a starter in a year or two. I think Benson is going to immediately contribute out of the backfield, maybe even as their starter near the end of the season, and then Melton and Jones might even be starting corners in a year or two. So yeah, really good draft for them on day 2. The Atlanta Falcons, they follow that up with not my favorite draft on day 2 or day 1 for that matter, as you guys already know. But Rook, bear with me here. Rook Arororo out of Clemson. Yes, Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo. Arororo. And then we've got Trice out of Washington, highly productive pass rusher out of Washington. He's a guy that's more kind of you're drafting the production, you're drafting the technique, you're drafting the floor, I think, with Trice out of Washington. They definitely needed a floor pass rusher. They needed somebody that can come in and contribute right away. I think they might have got that in Trice, but they didn't get a very good athlete, somebody that didn't run very impressive for his size at 6'4", 245. Obviously playing opposite Latu, he definitely took advantage of some of his matchups on the tape, but I felt like solid player. I think he's going to be at least a backup in the NFL, might be a starter, but I don't think he's ever going to be like a super effective pass rusher, a role player. And then Rook is interesting because he has high upside. I would have preferred other picks. I would have preferred maybe other positions than interior defensive line, where they still have Grady Jarrett. They still have David Onyemata. I would have preferred other players at that spot, but Aroro, it wasn't the worst pick and has one of the best names in the draft, so you can't deny that. He also plays with really good pop, really good quickness. I think he's going to be more of a pass rusher type. He's kind of a weird body as well at 6'4", 294, a little bit slim for like an interior D tackle, but he's more of a penetrator. So looking forward to seeing that in Atlanta. I would give them a B-. Didn't love their picks today, but didn't hate them either. Definitely better than what they did in round one. The Baltimore Ravens are up next. Love the pick of Nate Wiggins out of Clemson in the late first round. Then they partnered that up with Rosengarten out of Washington, a tackle that started many games for one of the best teams in college football, 6'5", 308. He's going to be interesting. 2-year starter. He was a zone scheme guy. Obviously, Baltimore has deviated away from the gap scheme under the new offensive coordinator, I should say, from last year and this year. They, instead of the Greg Roman style, they want less beef, more feet, right? And this is exactly what Roger brings. He's got a little bit shorter arms, but really good lateral quickness, really good speed to move in space, and he'll be very effective, I believe, as a guard for the Ravens almost immediately. He is somebody that can come in and start right away. And I actually felt like the Niners were trying to pick him. They were one spot behind the Ravens, and the Ravens might have stolen their guy. So it might have been a steal, because I actually heard he might have gone in the first round. Like, some people were mocking him in the late first round. So this was definitely a value pick and definitely a guy that can contribute right away at a position of need. You have to give that an A across the board. And then with Isaac out of Penn State, he's a little bit of a raw pass rusher with tools, kind of like Chop Robinson, also out of Penn State, 6'4", 247, explosive player that plays with speed around the edge. They definitely needed to help their pass rush out, improve that depth at the pass rush position. I mean, Kyle Van Noy is only going to play for so long, and you can't keep re-signing him when he gets to 40 years old. So Isaac, I think he just adds another potential swing at the edge position, which is what the Ravens have been struggling to find, right? Like, they've been trying to take these swings at pass rushers that are very raw, with tools, with size, with the athleticism, but they have not been able to put those guys together in their system as of late. So I'm fascinated to see if Isaac works out, but he definitely slipped on consensus boards, and they picked him up in the late third round. So I have to give this day overall for the Ravens a B+. I think they addressed two needs that they definitely needed in edge rusher and offensive lineman. So I'll give them a B+. It wasn't blown away, but I thought it was an effective day for them. The Buffalo Bills are up next. The Buffalo Bills, they added with the first pick in the second round after trading back their first rounder to the first pick in the second round, pick 33, Keon Coleman out of Florida State. I don't like this pick personally. I'm not a Keon Coleman guy. He ran a 4.61 in the 40, and I just didn't see any separation skills on his tape, and then you combine that with running a slow 40, and that scares me a ton. It gives me N'Keal Harry vibes. I'm sorry, I'm a Patriots fan. I'm scarred forever. But he does have great contested catch ability. I think he'll be most effective because of his 10-yard shuttle. I think he'll be most effective, which he ran effectively at the combine, as a slot player. I think he's actually a big slot player. So if they can find a role for him as a big slot, maybe they can find something there. I think he's also fairly good after the catch on screens and things of that nature. Cole Bishop out of Utah is somebody that I like to replace Jordan Poyer. Plays with the same sort of box roll intentions. Has pretty good size to him as well. At 6'2", 206 pounds. He's going to be versatile, interchangeable. I think he's a really nice piece for the Buffalo Bills in the secondary. Definitely a Jordan Poyer type. Then Dwayne Carter, I think, could be a future replacement for Daquan Jones as a big run stuffer at 6'2", 302. On the interior, Dwayne Carter to me was a borderline top 5 D tackle in this class. I didn't see him as a super amazing pass rusher, but a guy that had good, effective strength at the point of attack to hold up against the run. And a 3-time captain at Duke, which is the first time in history. So obviously great character. So I think Buffalo got themselves 2 players that I really like in their defense, and then 1 player that I'm not certain about at receiver, but at least it addressed a receiver need. I'd have to give them a solid B for their day overall. The Carolina Panthers are up next. The Carolina Panthers, of course, traded up to get Xavier Legette out of South Carolina. They finally deviated from their strategy of only picking players and signing players that are from Carolina, which is nice to see. They did go after Jonathan Brooks, in my opinion, the most smooth and best running back in this draft class. Have to give them a check mark for that. Despite his injury, I do think he's going to be the best running back. Maybe not right away, but I like his skill set overall. I think he's a 3-down running back. I think he can catch the ball. I think he's going to be really good on screen passes. I think he's going to be a great check down option. And then he's really, really just easy in open space. He's a one-cut runner, no real nonsense. Not a guy that's going to make a ton of people miss. Not a guy that's going to run a ton of people over. But he's kind of like that effortless Dalvin Cook style to him. Some people compare him to Melvin Gordon. Pretty good feet to find the hole, and then he just hits it and he glides. He's fast. He's got good breakaway speed. Like his ability to be a starting running back in this league. Didn't see that as a huge need for them with Hubbard there, the Canadian, and then Miles Sanders signing that big contract. So I don't love the need pick, but like the player. And then Trevin Wallace, I really like this in terms of both need, as they did lose their best linebacker in Frankie Louvu. Obviously, Shaq Thompson's getting older. And then I liked Wallace. He was actually my 5th favorite linebacker in this class. 6'1", 237. They get him in the 3rd round. Runs really fast at 4.51. Has really good flowing and sideline-to-sideline ability. I think the Panthers did a good job overall on day 2. I'd have to give them a B+ because I just like those players a lot. Next up, the Chicago Bears. The Bears, of course, picked Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, so of course they had to address quarterback, receiver, and tackle, which is what I want the Patriots to do. I didn't think tackle was their biggest need here. I would have rather them gone after an interior defensive lineman or an edge rusher, but understanding that this was at the point of the 3rd round where they really were just going to take the best player available at some sort of position. The general manager is a former offensive lineman himself. He understands the depth of offensive line, and I think Karan out of Yale, with a big body, wide frame, great length, athletic kid, a lot of raw power, super, in need of technique, and definitely didn't show a ton of dominance against weaker competition, but at times he did, just with raw power and strength. I think he could be a developmental tackle. Maybe doesn't start in year 1, but maybe year 2 or year 3 could get to that point. I do like Braxton Jones, though. I would give this a C+. Nothing special, just overall an interesting pick. The Cincinnati Bengals are up next. The Bengals, of course, picked Mims in round 1. Then they followed that up with 3 selections in round 2 and round 3. I was actually surprised how much they got done here. They picked up 2 interior defensive linemen, probably their weakest position from a year ago in terms of just run defense was not good. DJ Reader went down. They didn't have a lot of depth to replace him. So they pick up 2 guys in hopes to replace him with Chris Jenkins, who's more of a 2-gap penetrator, but does do a really good job at holding his ground in the run game. I'd describe it as that. 6'3", 299, obviously a second-generational player on the national championship team, plays with good technique. I think he plays well on a good defensive line that's coordinated and well-schemed. He will do that in Cincinnati. High floor prospect with high IQ and good fundamentals. Not a super athlete, I would say, overall, like decent. A good, solid pick. I would say that he was more of a early 3rd rounder or like a late 2nd rounder to me, because I just don't see a huge upside with him. But I will say, I think he's going to contribute right away and be a good player for them with a solid floor. So I like that pick. Jermaine Burton was probably my favorite pick that they made on day 2. Just the upside that he has. I know there's character concerns there, but you put him in a room with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. We have Joe Burrow leading the way. I think that he's going to buy in. He's a really good, crafty route runner that can separate. He can play in the slot outside. He can run and burn people down the field. Burton is going to be a super 3rd receiver for this team. Really looking forward to that. Plays with great speed, downfield threat, smooth player. Then McKinley Jackson, who I think was maybe the 2nd best nose tackle in this class. They get in the 3rd round late. 6'2", 326. That's nearly 30 pounds heavier than Chris Jenkins, which tells you the difference in their type of style of play. But Jackson is a DJ Reader type replacement, big run defender that flashes a lot of talent, a little inconsistent, but he's got great size. So for Cincinnati, I have to give them an A-, B+. I love the Burton pick, and I feel like they address the defensive tackle position effectively. I also like their idea for what they're going for here, so I'd have to give them a B+. The Cleveland Browns are up next, and the Cleveland Browns, of course, had their first pick today because they didn't pick in the first round because Deshaun Watson sucks. Michael Hall Jr. went with the second round pick, with the 22nd pick in the second round. And then Zach Zinter went out of Michigan, a guard. So they addressed depth on the defensive and offensive lines. You can never really despise that. I would say that they needed linebacker. I would say that they needed depth in the secondary. I would say that a receiver would have been fun. But Michael Hall, if you were going to make a pick on the D-line, this is the one to make. I'm just telling you right now, 6'3", 290. This guy is an absolute dog in terms of his pass rushing ability. Super high and efficient pass rusher in terms of a lot of metrics across the board, but he really reminds me of those elite interior pass rushers. Just his way that he is quickly popping off the ball faster than anyone on the D-line, gets through with great hand usage, just rips around a guy. He's going to be a 3 technique, probably going to start as a designated pass rusher type. He's going to be a lot like a Maurice Hurst, that they already have on the team. Just he's going to go to work in the pass rush department, and he's got quick pop and elite skill off the ball. His concern is run defense. He needs to work on that, but really elite upside. Zach Zinter's more of a floor pickup, a good solid backup out of Michigan. I think that he is going to provide just a nice layer of depth for Wyatt Teller and a potential flexibility to move off of him in the future, as well as Joel Bitonio, who is aging. So I understand those picks. I think that Michael Hall has super potential. This could end up being an A if he hits the way that he could. But I would say overall, I didn't love where they addressed the positions. I'd have to just give them a B overall. The Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys went with Marshawn, like Marshawn Lynch, Marshawn Nealand out of Western Michigan, an edge rusher. Cooper Beebe, the offensive guard out of Kansas State. And then the linebacker out of Notre Dame, one of the Island boys. So Marshawn Nealand is fascinating because he has good power, explosive strength, a pretty good length, and he is a lot like a DeMarcus Lawrence, Dorrance Armstrong type of edge rusher. 6'3", 267. I think he is a Dorrance Armstrong replacement. That's what I think he is. So I like that pick. I don't think he has incredible 10-sack upside, but I think he's going to be a good player in the league and going to be able to play on all 3 downs and set the edge and even pass rush. Then you've got Cooper Beebe, who I thought was their best pick overall. I think he's going to be a day 1 starter at guard out of Kansas State. 4-year starter who played guard and tackle at Kansas State. I think did he play tackle at the end? But I think he's going to move to guard in the NFL, and this is going to give them good versatility. He might even be able to play center, but he's strong, big, he can anchor, he's really smart in my opinion. A lot of offensive line gurus really like this guy, so I gotta like it as well. And then Notre Dame linebacker, Maurice is his first name, I believe, 6'2", 234. Not too familiar with his game. Overall, I would say he looks like Eric Kendricks. Like, he has the same hair. He almost has the same structure of his body, 6'2", 234. Really good length to his game, according to ESPN. Runs well, chases with great effort. I wasn't impressed by a lot of the linebackers in this class. I didn't think it was a super impressive linebacker class, but if you come out of Notre Dame, you play linebacker, you probably have a high IQ, and you can probably stop the run. So I will say that on the basis. But they did need linebacker, so I like that pick. I would say that the Dallas Cowboys had a better day 2 than a day 1. I actually like this class for them overall. I think they got 2 defenders that's going to provide depth and potential down the road. I like Nealand quite a bit. And then Beebe, I think, is going to be an instant starter. So I would say that this was a B+ type of day from the Dallas Cowboys. I'm giving a lot of B+ out. I'm not quite A's yet. The Denver Broncos are up next. After they picked Bo Nix, they only had one pick on day 2, which is absolutely embarrassing for the roster shape that they're in, but they made it count. I really like Jonah Ellis. I think they needed an edge rusher. I thought they might go edge rusher in the first round. Jonah Ellis is their type of edge rusher, a little bit smaller side, 6'2", 248, but man, he plays with really good upside as a pass rusher. Kind of like what they were looking for in Batonio, I believe. Similar kind of size, but plays with great quickness. I think he plays with good bend, good flexibility, just the ability to play with like stutter step and kind of like foot fire, and then also like good hands and spin moves and a lot of different, moves in his bag. And he was highly productive. I think he had like 16 sacks in 18 games. So yeah, Jonah Ellis could be a dog for them, definitely as a pure pass rusher. So I like this pick. I'd give them, they only had one pick though, so I don't really know what to do with that. But just based on that pick, I'd give them like an A minus. Based on the overall day, I'd have to give them like a B just because they only had one pick. The Detroit Lions are up next. The Detroit Lions picked Terrion Arnold, and then they followed that up by trading up once again for another defensive back in Ennis Rakestraw out of Missouri, junior, that is. He's going to be a safety, in my opinion. 5'11", 183. He was my second or third favorite safety in this class. I think he could play nickel, but he pretty much has like no flaws other than the fact that he's a little slower for a corner. But at safety, I think he possesses the length, the run stopping ability, the start ability, the quickness laterally. He's kind of like a branch type. And to me, he is like a CJ Gardner-Johnson replacement. Somebody that could play in the slot if need be, somebody that could play at free safety if need be, somebody that could cover a shifty receiver, but maybe not a go down the field deep threat. He's going to be able to be good in man coverage. He's going to be able to be good in zone coverage. He's very instinctual, but you just can't have him match up with those like big deep threat receivers. As long as he doesn't do that, he's going to be a great football player. I think they've got themselves two really good, smart, instinctual defensive backs. And I really like the vision there for Detroit in terms of getting two guys that are kind of like Branch and CJ Gardner-Johnson. They have a type there in Detroit. So I would give them, just for that pick, I guess I'd give them, honestly, like a solid A-. Like, I wish they maybe would have had another pick to work with, and that's really where the minus comes in, but the player seems pretty good to me. The Green Bay Packers had 4 picks, which just on the surface is extremely impressive for a team that is as good as they are, has as much depth as they have. But Edgerrin Cooper, I think, is a phenomenal pick with their first pick in the second round. I thought he was my second favorite linebacker in the class, but when you kind of talk about the injury history of Peyton Wilson, which we'll get to later in this video, Edgerrin Cooper, for many, I could see as the number 1 linebacker. The thing I really liked about him, to me, he reminded me a lot of like Devin White when Devin White was at his peak. Like, just a unbelievable speed, sideline to sideline ability, downhill, like fearless nature, just an explosive disruptor that can blitz, that can tackle, had 8 sacks in his final season, tracks down quarterbacks in space on quarterback spies, has decent range and coverage, but he often played near the line of scrimmage. And to me, he is going to complement what Quay Walker does. Quay Walker is more of a rangy, long coverage player, and Cooper is more of an in the box, scrape around, find the running back, and tackle that guy and blitz. Javon Bullard was their other second-round pick out of Georgia. Really versatile player at safety. I think he could play in the nickel position. I think he could play strong or free safety. Not the most athletic, but super high IQ. I think he is going to be somebody that can play in the quarters coverages, in the cover threes, as a box safety for this team, complementing Xavier McKinney. He is somebody that when I watched his tape, I was just like, he's always in the right spot. He's a good tackler. He's a sure player. Very high floor pick. Marshawn Lloyd, not a huge fan of, fumbled a lot. Kind of interesting out of USC, 5'9", 220. Definitely has some explosion to his game, but I didn't really think that he was like super fantastic in any really real area. I would have preferred a different pick here. He's going to be their third string running back in year 1. Not sure where that's really going to lead. He's 5'9", 220. He's compact. He's got decent speed, not great speed. He's got the ability to definitely make, some guys shed off of those tackles because of his compact nature. Maybe he's an A.J. Dillon replacement down the road. Tyron Hopper out of Missouri, linebacker, super athletic guy, another linebacker here. I don't love that they went with double dip at linebacker because I just believe in Cooper and I like Walker, but Hopper is going to be nice depth for them at the very least and probably a good special teamer. He's a lighter inside linebacker at 6'2", 231, but he plays once again with his hair on fire. He's a guy that is downhill tackler, sometimes gets a little bit confused in coverage, a little bit confused by eye candy, which, he's going to need to learn. He's a little bit of a project, but I could see him working out. He's definitely got the physical tools that you like at this position. So overall, I would say for the Green Bay Packers, I'd have to give them, I really like the Cooper and Bullard picks, but I don't love Lloyd and Hopper as much. I don't mind Hopper. I'd have to give them a B+, maybe an A-, just because I think they got two true starters in the second round. Like, I think Bullard is going to be a starting safety, and I think Cooper is going to be a starting linebacker, at least for their rookie contracts. But I don't love the running back and the linebacker picks there, but I do really like their second round. After that, the Houston Texans, they picked Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia. Not a huge fan of him personally, just because he doesn't have great speed. I'm not a guy that loves 4-6 corners. If you can't run, you can't play for my defense. That being said, I think he projects as a smart inside corner that is good in a multitude of coverages, as Georgia plays a very complex scheme for college football. Very good in press coverage, 6 foot, 186. He might be able to succeed in D'Amico Ryan's defense in a lot of cover 2 and potentially quarters coverages, but I just don't feel like he's a guy that you want to have in man. He might be like a Lenore type for D'Amico Ryans, but I don't know, man. He might have to be a nickel guy. So I didn't love that pick overall, but I definitely identified with the need. Blake Fisher, loved the floor with this pick. I think he could be a future tackle for them if they choose to move on from Howard eventually. I think he's somebody that's just a good tackle that's going to give them quality depth. You can never have enough tackle depth. And then Bullock out of USC is a high upside pick. Plays, I think, like more of a true free safety speed role, like a roamer role. He's somebody that can play the back, solo safety, kind of like a cover 1 or cover 3, inside post safety. He's a ball hawk, a lot of ball production. And yeah, he's a little inconsistent with tackling and things like that. But in a third safety role where he is being designed to be a deep safety in this defense, I think he could be a nice little rotation player almost immediately. So I do like that pick a decent amount. So I'd say overall, I'd just give them a B. I think they got a couple nice picks. I'm just a little worried about their first pick. Next up, the Indianapolis Colts are next. The Colts ended up going after Latu with A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. And then some guy I never really watched out of Pittsburgh, offensive lineman. I tried to ask my buddy Mike, who I was watching the draft with. He's a Steelers fan. He wasn't too familiar with him other than the fact that he thought he would go earlier. But he started 11 games at left tackle, 13 games at right tackle, so clearly has a lot of experience. I did hear that he might kick into the inside to play guard. If that's the case, that would make a lot of sense because they do need an improvement at right guard. So if he could potentially push their right guard out and replace him, that would be nice. But either way, you can always use more tackle depth, especially when Braden Smith's getting a little bit older. So don't mind that pick. A.D. Mitchell is the big headline here. I think he is a high-risk, high-reward selection. There's things off the field that you might be concerned about, but a lot of it might just come down to his health. So, and his health in terms of, I believe it's diabetes. I don't think it's anything too severe. Obviously, he had to play through it with Texas and Georgia. I don't exactly know what the buzz is 100%, so I don't want to give the kid a bad, misnomer here. But when I watched him on tape, based on the football player, I thought that some of the concerns actually showed up on tape. He played a little bit inconsistent. I felt like he showed at times to be a number 1 receiver potentially in the NFL with just fluid movement for a guy at 6'2", 205. He just has rare quickness, rare route running capability, rare change of direction that you don't often see at that size. He also has good hands and just really easy movement. Just a really interesting guy. 4.34 speed. Like, when you think of an X receiver in the NFL and you think of that speed, that size, that fluidity, often those guys succeed in the NFL. Now, we'll have to see how he looks off the field and how that goes, but overall, I have to really appreciate the effort by the Colts here. I would have preferred them go with a corner in the third round, so that's maybe where I get a little bit of a nitpick in on them. But I think I have to say this is an A- just because they potentially got a number one receiver in the second round that fell way too far and is probably a first rounder in a lot of other drafts. So yeah, I like that Mitchell pick a lot, and then you can never go wrong with offensive line, so I can't really dock them a ton on that. A-. Jacksonville's up next. They picked Mason Smith out of LSU, a defensive tackle that I thought went a little too early for my liking, but he possesses a lot of the skills that Balky's looking for on the defensive line: length, power, right, strength, and he's going to be a rotation player. They have a very deep defensive line. He's 6'5", 306. Versatile. I think he could probably play defensive tackle for them, but I don't really know where he slots in immediately. Like, I don't really see him getting a huge role immediately, which when you're a second-round pick, you'd like to see that guy be able to contribute. So, I don't know. Maybe he's like their third D tackle or something like that. Jerrion Jones, cornerback out of Florida State. Wasn't as high on him as I was his teammate, but 4.38 40-yard dash, showed off good speed, good size. I think that he showed an ability to close on the ball extremely well, and I do appreciate that they picked a corner. He played a lot of nickel corner, and that is actually rare to see a guy that played as much nickel corner as he did in college be able to play that in the pros. He blitzes, tackles, obviously, has good kind of awareness. So if he translates from FSU to Jacksonville as a nickel corner, I think that's a good pick. I'd have to give them a C+ for their draft just because I like the nickel corner pick, don't love the D tackle pick as much. I don't know why I was on Las Vegas there. I apologize. Where's my Jacksonville? Do I have Jacksonville here? Oh, there it is. I apologize. Jacksonville, just to go back to them here. Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round. Loved that pick. Love what they're doing overall. Defensive tackle, Mason Smith out of LSU. Jerrion Jones out of Florida State. Jerrion Jones is my favorite pick on day 2 because I think he's going to be a nickel nearly immediately for them. Mason Smith, I don't see an immediate starting role for him, but he plays with the length that is necessary for Balky. And Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round, I know this isn't part of the grade. I just love what they did there. So they got a corner on day 2, which is what we thought they might get on day 1, but they did go with the receiver on day 1. I really like how Jacksonville is kind of like formulating in my mind on power rankings. They're definitely moving up those power rankings. Next up, now I have to see where I messed up on my alphabetical order here. The Kansas City Chiefs are next up. So the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, went with Xavier Worthy in the first round. They only had one selection on day 2. They actually made multiple trades in order to trade up, and they got Kingsley Samatutia. I don't know how to properly say his name, but the BYU tackle that a lot of people thought they would pick in the first round. I actually projected that they would pick this kid in the first round. So for them to be able to get him in the late second, I think is great value. Now, he is a project. He shows inconsistency, but impressive ability with his feet and the ability to kind of block off those speed rushers. I think that with Andy Reid teaching him, it won't take him too long to get up to speed to be a starter. That being said, I would have preferred maybe them to get a tackle that was more pro-ready, just because they do need a left tackle to play right away. So this kid's a little bit flawed and might struggle early on, but could eventually become a really good player, right? Has size and the feet and the range to be able to make up a lot of ground at that tackle position. And I'm intrigued to see him in the run game. So Kansas City, nice pick there. Next up, the Los Angeles Chargers are up next. They went with one of my favorite picks of the early second round, which was Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey out of Georgia was my fifth or sixth favorite receiver in this draft class. And yeah, fifth or sixth. I believe sixth. Ladd McConkey was my sixth favorite receiver. There you go. Out of Georgia. What I really liked about him, no wasted movement, no fat in his game, great route runner, 6 foot, 186, ran a 4.39 in the 40. He is more than a slot receiver. He can play outside. He can run vertical, although he's more of a sharp route runner. I think that against press, he will struggle a little bit. He doesn't, like, to compare him to Ricky Pearsall, who went in the first round. In my opinion, Ricky has more kind of like fluidity and agility in his like releases, which I think will make him more of an effective outside guy, inside guy. Ladd McConkey, I think he can play either or, but he is more of a guy that I think you have to help with releases, maybe play him as the Z receiver, have him just run sharp routes. That's what he's really good at, running textbook routes. He's good after the catch. He's got really deceptive speed and pretty reliable hands. He does need to stay healthy though. I think he could be the best receiver on that team right away. Junior Colson was the next pick out of Michigan, linebacker, of course, a Harbaugh pick, so honestly not even really going to give much of an evaluation just because, like, if Harbaugh wanted him, he played on his team, you have to like the pick. They definitely needed a linebacker, so they addressed two huge needs, did the Chargers there. I would say that this is honestly an A day for them. Like, I'm not a huge Colson guy. I preferred Peyton Wilson. I preferred Edgerrin Cooper. I preferred those guys over him, but he was probably my third or fourth linebacker in the draft, so I don't hate the pick. And he was in the third round. I just don't think he played with a lot of athleticism, speed. I felt like his tackles, although he had a lot of them, were not overly impressive. I would say that this is an A- draft by the Chargers because I really love the McConkey pick. I think Colson really addresses a need, and Harbaugh definitely got his guy. But at the same time, I'm not sure I'm in love with his guy. The Los Angeles Rams are up next. The Rams selected Jared Verse in round 1. Then they got Braden Fisk out of Florida State in the early second, which I believe they traded up for, and then Blake Corum out of Michigan at running back, as well as Cameron Kitchens out of Miami. So Braden Fisk, it's hit and miss for me with him. I like him because he brings some Aaron Donald traits in terms of pop, right? Like pop off the ball, quick first step, the ability to penetrate upfield and get to the quarterback. He's going to struggle against the run, but as a pass rusher in a rotation of the defensive line and the inside, I think he's going to be effective. So I like his role immediately there to help replace Aaron Donald. Obviously, he's not Aaron Donald. 6'4", 292, a little bit smaller, a little bit kind of lacking against the run. Blake Corum, really effective running back. I love how he runs in terms of his cut ability. I love how he's able to stop-start. I love how he has great vision. I think he'll be a great backup for Kyren Williams. Really ideal backup because I think he can catch the ball well enough. And man, they're similar body shapes, 5'8", 205, and just great dime quickness and cut ability. Not great speed, but great quickness, great vision. Then Cameron Kitchens, also good contact balance. Cameron Kitchens, 5'11", 203 safety out of Miami. Playmaker, ran fast at his pro day, or faster than, of course, the 40 time that he was given. I would say that in terms of need, the need was there for a safety. This guy's probably not going to play immediately, but Jordan Fuller did leave. He did have 11 interceptions the past 2 seasons. He seems to be a pretty good tackler. He seems to be a little bit like Jordan Fuller, a guy that almost looks like a corner, but is playing safety with high intelligence, high instincts, and good tackling form. So Kitchens is a guy that I think could probably be like their third safety. Maybe he starts right away, but I'm not sure about that. And then eventually become a starter for them. I would say that the Rams, I would give them a... Man, it makes sense. All their picks make sense. I would say, though, I don't love Fisk, which was their first pick. Corum is a backup running back, so not a lot of upside there. And Kitchens. Kitchens. Is that how you say his name? Anyways. I I would say like a B, just because like the upside of that day 2 is not extremely high. They could have went for more upside, in my opinion. The Las Vegas Raiders, finally, we're going to get to them. So Brock Bowers in round 1. Then they got Jackson Powers-Johnson, which I thought was a phenomenal pick with the 12th pick in the second round. One of my favorite picks and one of the best picks of day 2. Thought he was the best center in the draft. Loved him at the Senior Bowl. Played with great power, great anchor. Just a dog. Like, he plays with so much toughness, so much balance. Like, he just doesn't get pushed around, and he pushes people around. He's going to be a great run blocker for them. He's old school. Love his fit with the Raiders. Love it. So that's an A for that alone. And then they get a guy named Glaze, which is one of the funniest names in the draft, out of Maryland. 6'4", 315. You can never go wrong with adding more in offensive line help. And potentially he could be their right tackle. He played 16 games at left tackle, 16 games at right tackle at Maryland. Has length, has pretty good kick step ability to get out and block. He'll be a backup to start, but maybe has a potential to be a starter down the road. So just for the Powers-Johnson pick alone, I'm going to give them like a B+. But Glaze is also a solid pick, not a great pick in my opinion. A B+, maybe even A-. I might have to kick that up to an A-, man. I just love that pick so much. Trying to move on ESPN here. Let me refresh. Guys, Gronk spike the like button if you haven't already. I'm just trying to keep in my alphabetical order here. We've got the Miami Dolphins up next. There they are. The Miami Dolphins are up next. So Chop Robinson in the first round, and they only had one pick in the second round, and it was not my favorite pick, Patrick Paul. So clearly there is an idea for Miami in this draft. It's go for super athletes, because that's exactly what Patrick Paul is. But in my opinion, Patrick Paul is extremely raw. When I watched him at the Senior Bowl, for a guy that started 44 games at left tackle, he just did not play like a player that started 44 games. His technique was not great. He was getting beat at the Senior Bowl. He did have incredible strength, 30 reps of 225 on the bench, tied for the fourth most offensive lineman. His 40 time, his 3-cone time were all good, according to ESPN. Like, really, really good athlete. Kind of reminds me of, in terms of the guys in this draft, like comparable to Tyler Guyton in terms of a lot of upside, but like really raw players, not great technique. I think he's a tall player at 6'8" that doesn't play smaller, right? He plays tall. When we talk about Joe Alt, he plays like a smaller human when he's 6'8". He actually has good balance, good bend, the ability to get low with his knees. So that's troubling to me. I don't know if he's a great one in Miami there. So I'd have to give them a C. I didn't love their day, and I didn't love their pick. I understand their pick, but I don't love their pick. The Minnesota Vikings are up next. J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner. I'd give the Miami a C+, okay? J.J. McCarthy, Dallas Turner on day 1, they did not have a day 2 pick. So, incomplete. The New England Patriots are up next. Patriots had 2 picks, Jalen Polk and Caden Wallace out of Penn State, a tackle. So, they did what I wanted them to do. Quarterback, receiver, and tackle in that order. And I like that. Now, in terms of the players, I'm not super pumped. Jalen Polk gets me a little excited. A lot of people are very high on him. And I'm not going to be, crazy about this pick, because I don't feel like his upside is immense. Okay? But I do think his floor is high. And that's something that the Patriots don't often go for at wide receiver. Jalen Polk, 6'1", 203. I think he could play all over the formation, but I think he could play X for this team. He could replace Devontae Parker. There is some kind of Kendrick Bourne / Juju / I could see a lot of similarities in some of these guys' games. But he is a very good catcher of the football. He has great hands. He is somebody that is very smart, has high IQ and understanding of zone coverages. I think he's got great body control and ability to get in the air and make those tough, difficult catches. A little bit of Jacoby Myers, now that I think of it, in his game. A savvy type of route runner, but not like a super fast or a super quick or a super great athlete, but more of like uses savviness, leverage, all that sort of stuff to attack a defender. I think he's got enough speed to be able to play on the outside, And I think he's got enough, after the catch ability to also be a little bit after the catch. So he's kind of just a well-rounded player. Like, I kind of thought of him as like Palmer out of the Chargers, like a really solid receiver in the NFL, maybe like a fringe 2, high-end 3, not an electric number 1. That's kind of what I feel of him. But honestly, like, at this point, with the way the Patriots have been picking receivers, I'd rather them pick a guy like this than take a swing for a guy that has a lot of bust potential. I'm just going to be honest there. And then Caden Wallace out of Penn State, they see him as a right tackle who can play left tackle. So I really like that about him. Now, the only reason he didn't play left tackle is because of the guy that played left tackle for them for the last couple of years, Fashanu. So Wallace is smooth, and although I didn't study him, this is what ESPN says for Patriots fans out there. He started 40 games at right tackle, so he has a lot of experience, which I love. So he might even be able to play right away. He's really smooth at getting to his set and times his punches well in pass protection. He shows an ability to anticipate inside moves and quickly pick up stunts. So if I'm projecting here, right, Fashanu was really, really good in pass protection, a little raw in run game, right? This guy seems similar, right? So I really like that about him, just on the surface of his evaluations across the board. He did seem to go a little bit earlier than people would have projected, but we needed a tackle, and if they think that's the guy, especially considering the Patriots have been good at drafting linemen in the past, and the Packers have been good at drafting linemen in the past, and the Browns have been good at drafting linemen in the past, and this front office is kind of a conglomeration of the Browns, the Packers, and the Patriots. So they must think this guy is pretty good. So I'm excited for that for sure. So I actually think Wallace could be a little bit of a sleeper for Pats Nation. And then I think Polk is going to be a solid player. So I'm going to go with B+, because I like the picks. They address the needs. They maybe aren't flashy, sexy picks, which keep him from being an A, and there wasn't super value there. But they might have gotten 2 really productive and proven players coming out of college, which I'm excited about. So, Patriots, B+. New Orleans Saints are up next. Only 1 pick. Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. 6 foot, 199. I think he's better in zone than man. Doesn't have great physical tools, in my opinion. Plays better with quickness than speed. I think he projects as a nickel corner. To me, he could be their nickel player, maybe even a safety. I think his biggest strength is his ability to play press, his ability to have great length with that press coverage. And then also, I think he's very, very smart. Very high IQ. Played pretty well against elite teams in college. And was maybe going to be a first-round pick not long ago. So I see what they're doing there. I feel like they didn't really need a corner as much as they need maybe more offensive line help, maybe a third receiver. But I get it. Like, I don't hate it. If they think he could be a safety, maybe they think he's going to be a hybrid safety corner like a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, then I totally see that pick working out for them. So they're good with secondary players. I think the Saints I'm going to give them a B for that one. The New York Giants are up next. Malik Neighbors in the first round. Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota was one of the better safeties in the class. He went in the middle of the second round with the 15th pick in the second. Nubin, I just was really impressed by his instincts. I just think the first and foremost, he just plays with incredible instincts, seeing the ball, get the ball, just the ability to read routes, read concepts. I just think he has very, very high IQ. Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky, I think that he is a feisty corner, and he gives me Roger McCreary vibes. A guy that was drafted by the Tennessee defensive coordinator in Tennessee, is now the defensive coordinator in New York. I could see him immediately slotting in Andrew Phillips as a little bit of a guy lacking length for the prototypical corner, but can slide inside, plays with toughness, feistiness, great tackling ability, good stickiness, good mirror and match ability, and pretty good speed. I think he could be a really good nickel corner, and he's feisty. So I like that about him. Really makes sense in their scheme. I think the Giants, overall for this day, I think they get A-, B+. I'm going to give them that. Then next, the New York Jets. They only got Malachi Corley, who I wasn't as high on as other people. They definitely needed a third receiver, and this guy gives them a different dimension in terms of yards after catch. He's a yak monster. He's got really good size and kind of a weird frame to him. I'm not in love with his route running, not in love with his separation skills, not in love with his speed. I think he's a little bit of a phony productive guy in college in terms of a lot of screens and a lot of underneath yak stuff. But if they can find a way to get him the ball in that role, he can be a good player. I think he's a slot player in the NFL. I'd give them a solid B minus B for that pick. Next up, the Philadelphia Eagles. Cooper DeJean and Jala Hunt out of Houston Christian. I'm not too familiar with Hunt's game, obviously, as I don't know how to say his name. But according to ESPN, he is a 6'4", 252. Honestly, I wasn't really paying attention when they made this pick because I was like, defensive lineman for the Eagles. Okay, whatever. He's going to be like the 8th defensive lineman. He loves defensive linemen. I'm not going to hate on it. They love picking defensive linemen every single year. But he's a versatile defender who plays both off and on the line. He has the first step, length, and closing burst to develop into a productive edge rusher. He actually is pretty comparable to somebody like Josh Sweat, coming out, who was actually a 4th-round pick. So if they found the next Josh Sweat, you have to love it. But the Cooper DeJean pick gives them an A automatically. This guy's a first-round talent, first-round player. He is a baller, just a great athlete. Could have been an all, college basketball player. Just a great athlete. Like, he can run fast. He's a track athlete. I think he's going to be a great safety where he's just got great instincts, great athletic instincts. Like, in terms of he can play any sport and just have a feel for playing that sport and be an elite player at that sport. And that's what I think this guy is. Fearlessness, great tackling on tape, 6'1", 203, has a big frame for a corner, can play nickel, can play like a star position if you want him to, could play safety, free safety, strong safety, has the speed, I think, and enough ability to play man coverage to cover tight ends if you want him to stop tight ends and be a George Kittle stopper. I think he's somebody that could also be a nickel and really be a good blitzer or tackler there. I think he might be able to get away with playing on the outside, but I don't think he'd be ideal in that spot. I think he's more of like a Harrison Smith-esque player where he's got really good speed. He's faster, though. Maybe not quite as big or physical, but just the instincts and the ball production and the hands and all that and the awareness. That's what I mean with Harrison Smith. Just a baller, dude. So he's going to be a beast, and I think that's an A. Next up, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Love their draft today. I was with my buddy Mike, so I might be a little bit biased, but I thought they killed their draft today. They got Zach Frazier, who was one of the 3 best centers in the draft. With the 19th pick in the 2nd round, he's going to be an instant starter at the center position. Their offensive line all of a sudden is absolute mayhem up front. Like, they've got dogs up there, and they're going to be able to push people and bully people around. This guy was a college wrestler, played with great strength, great power, feistiness, nastiness. You love to see that in a Pittsburgh Steelers center. I think he's going to be really good. Then you've got Roman Wilson, wide receiver out of Michigan. Chris Sims thought he was a top 5 receiver in the class. I didn't go quite that far. He was in my top 15, top 12 range. He's just a guy that, for the best team in the country, would throw him the ball on 3rd down. So that's all I have to really say, right? Like, he was the chain mover, the go-to guy in the best team in the nation. Plays with good contact balance. Thought he showed a really good ability and a knack for a big play. He's a vertical slot player that can get downfield and really run, and he's got enough wiggle to be a good route runner. Intrigued by that pick. Think he's a slot receiver in the NFL. Peyton Wilson's might be the best pick of day 2. This guy is a day 1 athlete, a day 1 linebacker, a day 1 pick, if not for some injury concerns of his past. 6'4", 233, ran a 4.4 in the 40-yard dash, has fluidity and coverage, sideline to sideline capability, blitzing capability, just a great football player. I just couldn't get over how he was not being considered as a higher draft pick. He kept falling and kept falling and kept falling. And eventually the Steelers made him their pick in the 3rd round. And a lot of it has to do with medicals, not his play. He is arguably the most talented linebacker on tape in this class, dominant in his final season, makes incredible tackles behind the line of scrimmage, all over the field, great effort player. I can't say enough about this guy. I love him. That being said, he'll probably be a coverage backer or a dime backer or like a nickel backer in his rookie season, and then eventually progress into being a true starter, or at least playing in some sort of rotation for the Steelers because of his injury history. Then after that, and the Steelers get an A, by the way. San Francisco 49ers are up next. We'll go to San Fran, and then we'll go to Seattle. San Francisco 49ers. So I think that day 2, they had an awesome draft. And honestly, I really like their draft class so far. Ricky Pearsall, he's a receiver that Kyle Shanahan drafted. He's going to be good. Then after that, Renardo Green out of Florida State was my fourth favorite corner in the entire draft. They got him in the 2nd round, late 2nd round. 6 foot, 186. Great press corner. Great man corner. Good speed, not great speed. He is a L'Jarius Sneed, Charvarius Ward type. Press the daylights out of you at the line of scrimmage, be able to run with you down the line of scrimmage, shut down Malik Neighbors in the game against LSU, can play mirror match style of man, can play zone, 52 career games, right? Not a ball hawk, but a guy that just competes at the catch point, a guy that can just shut you down. He's more of a shutdown guy in press coverage than he is a ball producer, interceptor guy. Dominic Pooney out of Kansas. I thought this was a really good pick. I've heard great things from the offensive line guys out there that really study the down and dirty of offensive linemen in the draft. And I thought he was a little bit of a steal based on a lot of people's boards. Really good at the Senior Bowl, showing off his snaps at center. He can play guard. He can play tackle. He can play everywhere. He's tough as hell. He could start anywhere on the offensive line for the Niners. I feel like he'll probably play guard, but I think his biggest trait is his movement ability in the run game, which is exactly, and also I would say movement ability in the run game and pass protection. His pass protection is really sound. And I think they're looking to build around Brock Purdy, and they get him a receiver on day 1, a guard on day 2 that can pass protect. I think the Niners on day 2 got an A for me. Seattle Seahawks are up next. Seahawks drafted Byron Murphy in the 1st round, and then Christian Haynes in the 3rd. Obviously, only evaluating Christian Haynes. I thought he fell a little bit further than I would have expected. One of the guards that was expected to go in the 2nd round falling to the 3rd round. And honestly, the basic analysis of this is he was a projected 2nd round guard on my board, a guy that fell a round later and to a position that's the biggest need on the Seahawks roster. I have to give them based on just the pick, probably an A-. And then based on like the day, I'd probably give them a BB+ just because they only had 1 pick. But yeah, that's a really good pick at a position of need for Seattle. I just wish they had more picks. After that, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They only had what? They actually had a bunch of picks. I was looking at Tennessee for a second, but Chris Braswell out of Alabama, who I thought actually on tape looked just as good at times as Dallas Turner. And he has physical upside in terms of speed. He ran a fast 40. He only started 2 games at Alabama, but was a rotation player, 8.5 sacks, which is probably why he was drafted in the 2nd round, if we're being fair. But highly productive in terms of, I just think he plays with good speed, good ability around the edge, 6'3", 251, similar size and frame and ability to Shaq Barrett. If he can learn how to transfer his speed to technique along with the power that he utilizes, I think he's going to be a good player because I like the way he uses speed to power. He just needs to learn how to get more moves in his bag. and be a more productive kind of technician. But I think he's got the tools to be a really high-end rotation rusher, a really high-end starter, a number 2 rusher in the NFL. I thought that was a really deceptive pick. Tyke Smith out of Georgia, one of Ultra's favorites in the 3rd round. Todd Bowles now knows how to pick him. He plays with great instincts, great burst to the ball, great just ability to tackle. I think he's a really sound tackler. I think he could be their 3rd safety almost immediately and play like an all-around role. 5'10", 202, sort of like a Mike Edwards role for them, where he's kind of like a roamer, do-it-all type of player. Tyke Smith is a really highly intelligent player that has a high floor, like that pick. Jalen McMillan, another good pick by the Bucs. He could be their 3rd receiver from day one, maybe their 4th receiver because they've got some young guys that they like. But I like his size, 6'1", 197. I think he's a good route runner who's ability to separate, but I like his yards after catch ability probably the most. He's got really good change of direction. He's kind of like a Chris Godwin type. So I would expect him to play inside, outside, have versatility, and also give you a guy that can maybe replace Chris Godwin down the road, but McMillan is interesting. I think the Bucs get an A for me. Like, I thought that was a great draft for them on day 2. The Tennessee Titans are our second last team. They got T'Vondre Sweat, who I thought was overrated in my opinion. I think he's a big nose tackle that's going to be a big run stuffer, but that's not an extremely valuable position if you don't provide pass rush, and to me, Sweat really doesn't. That being said, I do think that there's always value in having a big fat man controlling the middle of your defense, and Sweat can do that at his peak. He just needs to learn how to be a better pass rusher. He's 6'5", 366 pounds, a massive human being. He is going to be very hard to move in the middle of their defense. I'd give them a C+ for that pick. And the final draft of the day was the Washington Commanders, who had a ton of picks. They got Newton out of Illinois. They got the kid out of Michigan, Mike out of corner out of Michigan, who's more of a nickel to me. That was one of their better picks. I think he plays with really good instincts, really good lateral movement, 5'9". Doesn't have great length or a great size or frame, but I think he's a nickel player that tackles well, that reads the offense well. What does ESPN say about him? Balance, instincts, quickness. Exactly. Smooth at turning and running in press. Okay. Yeah, I see him as a nickel guy, though. I think he's more of a guy that can blitz, get after you, tackle in the run game at the line of scrimmage, drop into zone coverage, cover a shifty slot receiver. That's the type that he is in the second round. Ben Sinnott at tight end out of Kansas State. People see him as a Kyle Juszczyk fullback, H-back type. That's exactly what I believe Peter sees in him because he had Kyle Juszczyk in San Francisco. Brandon Coleman out of TCU, who I thought was solid at guard. I thought he looked pretty good at the Senior Bowl. I believe it was the Senior Bowl. Tackle on tape at TCU, moves inside probably in the NFL. I think he could contribute, maybe even get a spot on the offensive line right away. Some people thought he was a reach. I didn't necessarily. Luke McCaffrey, 3rd round, great high character player, obviously, but really underrated measurables. The McCaffreys are athletes, 6'2", 198. This guy has a crazy history of playing, like, I believe it was safety, quarterback, wide receiver throughout his college and football career. He catches, the ball pretty well. I think he's learning to run routes at a, pretty effective and efficient level for the amount of time he's actually spent at receiver. High ceiling for him, in my opinion, as a slot player, as he's barely kind of really played receiver as a football player, and he's a McCaffrey. So he could be like his dad. I wouldn't deny it at that height, at that ability to play receiver in the slot. Looking forward to that addition. He could be their number 3 receiver right away. So I thought that, and Newton out of Illinois, I didn't bring him up. He's the second best defensive tackle in this class. I just didn't think they needed a D tackle. So that one I kind of give a negative grade just for the need, but he's a good player, and I think he could be a really disruptive run defender, And I think he does a really good job at seeing through the trash, locating the ball, and stopping the run. I'm intrigued to see what fronts they play in Washington and how much he gets on the field. But a deep rotation on the defensive line is also important. I'd give the Commanders A- for their draft. I really liked a lot of their picks. I thought they addressed a decent amount of needs, but I just also like the players more so than anything else on day 2. So those are my grades for every single team on day 2, rounds 2 and 3 of the 2024 NFL Draft. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Grind spike the like button. Thank you so much for watching my draft coverage the last couple of days. And stay tuned for winners and losers of the draft. That will be coming very soon within the next couple of days. Peace, guys.